All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us again on Raw Generate's channel. I'm Jake, or Raw Generate on Instagram. And I'm here with a really awesome guest, Adrienne here, actually. She's another practitioner of Dr. Morse's, and we're going to have a cool discussion today about all things working with clients and the struggle with that, the emotional side of things, and just in general, the aspects that generally are overlooked. You know, everyone focuses on diet, they focus on the physical aspect, but there's a whole other psychological, cultural, social aspect that can make it really hard to get the results you want if you're following a Dr. Morse protocol, for example, or trying to get a certain health situation sorted out if you've got all these other things pulling you. So yeah, without further ado, Adrienne, thanks so much for being here. And yeah, we got a cool little chat
Sure.
this morning for me and tonight for you.
So yes, I'm Adrienne. I see clients under Holistic Living with Adrienne. That's how you can find me. So my journey started, let me see, I'm 40 now, so 7 years ago. 33, that magic number. Everything in my life was just horrible, and I was obese, depressed. Yeah, I was like 230 pounds at my heaviest. And I just didn't feel good. And my back, I had a car accident, and it left my neck broken. I broke several ribs and I had a brain injury. So those were major injuries. And over the years, my whole 20s basically, I had 3 kids and I did not take care of myself. So the weight just, accumulated. I ate like the worst diet, just a standard American diet, fast food. And it wasn't until I was 33 that stuff just really caught up with me. And my back was in so much excruciating pain every night. Like I didn't want to get out of bed and I couldn't even go to sleep. And I just remember telling my ex-husband then, like, this must be what it feels like to be 80 years old, where every bone in your body just hurts. And it was depressing because you think about your future, especially with small children. And it's like, this can't be life. This just can't be life. And I just remember feeling so tired of feeling so not good in my body and thinking of all the years I have ahead of myself just to live in pain. And I don't know what it was, but I just had this moment of like, why can't that be me? Like, why can't I change my life? If I do what everyone says is right, exercise and change your diet, then why can't I look like the person in the magazine or whatever it was? So I believe I didn't know it was called self-love, but I gave myself a chance. And I actually started with yoga. I was living in Colorado at the time, and it seemed like everyone was doing yoga. So I, I told myself that I'm going to do this to fix my back because my posture was just so not right. My neck healed with the step up in the vertebrae. So it just was
Oh, wow.
not, yeah. And I had like no mobility in my neck. I couldn't, to drive, I had to like turn my whole body. But so I did the yoga, and just in a week, like I felt so much better. I was able to crack like an area of my back that was locked up for years. Um, and I had a friend who is a raw food nutritionist, like coincidence, right? And she came to visit me, and she saw that I was trying to make these changes in my life, and she just told me like a few simple things. She told me, one, when you heat your food over 118 degrees, like you destroy the enzymes, the water soluble vitamins and minerals. She told me that she didn't know much about the lymphatic system, but she said that things accumulate. She talked about toxemia, and your blood gets toxic and whatever. And so just all of this stuff that she was telling me, she said 21 days you establish a habit. So it was like those 3 things, and it was like a light bulb for me. Like right then and there, I went all raw, and I had 3 simple recipes, and I was like, if I stick to this for 21 days, it'll be a new habit. So I ran with it, and I was completely 100% raw and just refining that and learning more for 3 years. I had moved to Florida during that time, and I was watching a lot of John Rose, started with him.
Awesome.
And then I found Dan McDonald.
Yeah.
And he just like, his energy was just like, it matched me a lot. And he was really entertaining to watch. And just the information he would say about, what he was juicing and like what it was for, fascinated me. And I was just thinking like, where he had to learn this somewhere. Where did he learn this? What books is he reading? Because I need to know like where that's coming from. And one day he mentioned being a student of Dr. Morse. And right there I was like, who is this Dr. Morse guy? Like I need to look into him. And so yeah, I became a practitioner right away because it wasn't right away, but I got his herbs right away. And it's only when I took the herbs, so I was learning how to like make raw meals and more stuff like that. And I was getting more refined in the sense of not needing to make the gourmet stuff, just like sprouting things and being more simple in that aspect. But I didn't know anything about the herbs. And I was still doing like nuts. I was doing a lot of like nut butters in my smoothies. So that kind of stuff, once you learn, it doesn't help you detox. So I feel like in those 3 years, I didn't have major symptoms, and I didn't even know to check my stool, to check my urine for filtration. I didn't know any of that stuff because I hadn't heard about Dr. Morse yet. So when I learned about him, I was more aware of what was going on in my body, and I did the herbs. And within a couple of days of doing the herbs, I had just like warts come out on my skin, like my arms. And I knew that this must be like detox. And so I didn't freak out. But that was crazy because I had that as a child growing up. I had parasites like come out in my stool. And it's weird because I was raw for so long, but like I had worms that I could visibly see in my stool. But that, like when I started seeing that and learning more about him, I learned that he had a school, and I just wanted to keep learning. And I think when we do this and we change our diet and we see like, wow, this is another way to live this life, like a whole other new way to experience this life. I think we want to share that with others. I think we really are in tune with the love of it, because when you're eating straight food from a tree that's grown by the sunshine, I do believe it raises your vibrations.
Sure.
I mean, it does literally. So
Yeah.
I think we just like want to share that with others because it's just we are so passionate about it. So that's what led me to his school. And yeah, ever since I keep learning every single day. I'm looking for new videos. I'm reading something. So yeah.
Same. It's funny because Marco from Dr. Morse's school, when I did a video with him, he was saying that because I often go back to the videos, I go back to the notes that I've taken, and Marco was saying like, don't these notebooks become like your Bible? Or like, don't the video archives become? It's like what you refer to, that you go back, you keep. It's like I always, when a new Dr. Morse video comes out or something else in this sort of detox world, I'm always looking at it, and but this, I think, as you said, it shows the passion for, the drive for wanting to help people get out of sort of a mediocre sort of way of living and actually getting true health, which is missed a lot of the times. We have so many different things of just like, take this supplement, take this thing, don't really change your diet. And something that Dr. Morse brought to light, and thankfully with his school, is sharing that is how to really get rid of really any problem you have. And actually, I wanted to ask, you said something really important that I've seen my clients struggle with. And it was, you talked about this things as soon as you went from being just like raw food, complex, raw, gourmet, whatever, and then you went more on the protocol and you saw the warts pop up. You had them when you were a kid. You saw parasites come out of you, and you knew that was detox. So like, what do you think could be a good thing to say to someone or a client or someone doing this who might get really scared and not know if it's detox, or like a little thing to remind them of perhaps what it looks like when you're detoxing, and it's not going to be just this smooth, like completely what's the term, like it's not going to be this like rainbows and butterflies 24/7.
Yeah. And it really depends. Like you'll know which clients are going to get those symptoms
Mm.
harder because those are the ones that have a lot more stuff going on, a
Yeah.
lot more issues. And those are the ones that don't stick around, unfortunately. But I have a client now, and she's a friend of mine, and she's never been really interested in changing her diet. But the more I talk about it, and she's getting older and she's feeling her body change,
Yeah.
she told me, she was like, if I didn't know you and like respect you, she was like, I would be scared of what's going on. But she has a huge boil under her armpit, and she's smells with all the proteins coming out. So I think it has to do with just trust, a lot of trust,
Yeah.
and respect for not you as a person, but just for your experience and what you know. I'm very soft spoken, and I'm pretty passive as a person. So, and I think people who are close to us, like our parents, will probably be the ones that won't listen to us. But
Mm.
I don't know. It's just really getting to someone, connecting with someone on that level,
Yeah.
and making sure you do tell them what to expect, because if you're telling
Yeah.
them afterwards, then that might not sit well with them. But
No. No, and I think
yeah,
as well, like something I've experienced with clients is you'll give them sort of the crash course, if you will, like what to expect in a healing crisis and so on. But then when these things start to hit or the detox starts to kick in, they can often forget. And I think a big
yeah,
reason why they forget is because this is something so different to everything else that we've ever learned. It's easy just for that to just fall out of our mind and for us to remember the default of what we've been taught or what we perceive as being health. You know, how generally, and I don't know for you, but in Australia, at least here, if you don't get sick, that's a good thing. You're known as like, you're a mate. Wow, you never get sick. But as we know, if you're someone eating junk food and you don't get sick, that's a serious problem because your lymph system is not moving at all, and all the acids are staying at home essentially. And I think you hit on a really important factor, and I've noticed this with clients of mine too. And I think anyone watching there might be someone here listening or watching who is not a Dr. Morse student or practitioner, but is someone that eats raw foods and fruits, and they struggle to help people. Is if you don't have that rapport with the person or the client, that respect that you talked about, or if that's sort of like got a brick wall between you and them, which I've noticed, I've had clients, they start off already with sort of a defense up. They're the ones that, as you said, they don't really stick around. They will, I had a lady, not a lady, sorry, a gentleman last year who he would have been my first type 1 reversal client, which he was at a point where his insulin was so low, like all on fruit and herbs. And his wife couldn't understand it. He couldn't understand it, but he was really passionate. But his wife was someone who pretty much was emotionally crushing him because she said, well, you're getting really thin though. But even though his insulin was almost non existent in terms of what he needed to inject. And this is type 1, which, as we know, is an incurable disease in the Western field, and seeing his insulin drop to this level was really exciting. And I remember he emailed me and he said, I need to study on this to get my wife off my back. I need to study to show that like fruits and herbs can reverse type 1 diabetes. And I said, you're not going to find that because we don't make those claims, but you can actually go into some groups and you can find people that no longer have type 1 anymore. And I recommended the groups, and I never heard from him. And it was really sad to see because he also during that time he said it wasn't working anymore because he started eating nuts and eggs and takeaway food, and he said his insulin went back up. And I said, well, of course it did, because you stopped you started
wow,
putting all these high protein fat and fatty foods into your body. And then he tried to make out that the protocol wasn't working, but I'm like, the protocol doesn't involve high protein foods and eggs. Like, you saw the difference. But it was an example of where the emotional side, or the part that's not even dietary related, because the diet itself is very simple. And I think this is sort of ties into an aspect that I think most people, including ourselves, have probably struggled with at some point, and that is, getting the diet down pat is actually quite a simple thing. It's the psychological pressure that we might get from family members or from friends or from the external world, the fact that the external world isn't really conducive of this way of living. Like, everything around us is pretty much telling us to do the opposite. And like, yeah, could you maybe speak on that, on your experience yourself and also with people you've helped and family and yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear that's being pumped into us from the time we're young, even, like
Yeah.
with our children, we tell them, oh, don't do that. We rush and like, it's like it scares them. And then just everything we've been fed through corporations and people with special interest on what we should
Yeah.
eat. But I do think it's a lot of fear. You mentioned it was his wife on his back, and that's really
Mm.
hard because that's someone who you're living with,
Yeah.
and you really have to be solid in your foundation of what you know. But you're right. When people start feeling yucky and achy and sick, they don't want to feel like that. There's a
Mm.
lot of fear because they don't trust the process. But literally, I tell people like you're just eating fruit. Like what is the worst thing that can happen when you're eating the food that is meant for our bodies? It's from a tree. But
Mm.
it's hard to really get to people who are the cognitive dissonance is very real.
Mm.
People holding on to their beliefs, like, no, this isn't right. I literally had someone tell me that the herbs, the tinctures, were making her go through anaphylaxis. And she even said to me, she's like, do you even know what that is? And I'm like, of course I do. Like, I promise you it's health. And she had so many issues going on, and she was a super skinny little girl. And I'm like, you're
Mm.
gonna experience a lot of things, and you have to trust that this is going to happen to you, and you're going to feel really, really bad. And I don't know if you know late Dr. Christopher, but
Yeah,
he's
Dr. Christopher. Yeah.
yeah, Dr. Christopher.
Yeah.
I have some
Yeah.
tapes of his, and I was listening to them, and he talks about clients who were going through like so much pain that this one lady had to bite down in a pillow, and she was like, I swear my neighbors heard me screaming. She was like, it felt like hot coals passing through me. So I mean, that does not sound, pleasant at all. Like that's how deep it can get. It can get
Mm.
scary, and your hair falling out, warts coming out of
Mm.
your skin, like
Mm.
crazy, crazy things. And you just have to know that your body is letting go of this stuff because it doesn't want to keep holding it on, holding,
Mm.
holding it in. And after that, most people say that they have a burst of energy or they feel so much better. So
Mm.
it's just something that is part of, we're repaying the debts that we've enjoyed, doing throughout our life, and now it's time
Mm.
to pay back. So
Mm. Yeah,
a lot
you
of people are
you
not willing to do that.
that was yeah, so that was so well said because I think reminding clients and friends, I'm helping my mom who has got to a point now where she doesn't get migraines anymore, and
Wow.
her glasses that she's using, I think they're like 1 or 2 levels less strong. So the optometrist has had to make the glasses less like that. And he was like, "This doesn't happen."
I
And
know.
yeah, but she's got other areas that have been a real trouble for her in her mouth and like in her teeth, and she's had some teeth problems. And she's like, "I think it's the fruit." And I'm like, "No, mum, I'm someone who my motivation for starting on this path was because my teeth were eroding from the inside out. Like I had a tooth removed years ago because it just eroded internally, another one that was going down. And I was like, had always had pain in my mouth. Once I understood iridology, I saw that I had so much lymph in my head and in my jawline. And
Yeah.
and soon as I go on herbs and fruit, the pain leaves the mouth. There's no more sensitivity. There's no more. But what can happen in that process of detoxification that you were talking about is you're repaying the debts, which essentially is cause and effect. And we know cause and effect applies everywhere in the natural world, including in the human body. And essentially, the human body is sort of a combustion system. Like it has gases that are produced by certain processes, and you know, we are essentially like alkaline by design, but acid by function. And there's always an acid residue in some degree. And if we have an excess of that, we're going to feel it. And just that point you talked about, that lady who was in so much pain, I've been on a bit of a like protocol myself at the moment, and I had this pain going up my arm. And in high school, actually, I did a workout once, like this exercise thing with this person who pushed me really far, and my whole arm on my right side swelled up and wouldn't go down. And I remember going to an ultrasound specialist, and they said, if this doesn't go down, you could get nerve obstruction, and we may have to amputate the arm. That they said that's worst case scenario. So, and me being, I think, 15 or 16 was like freaking out.
Yeah.
And it went down in a few like days, which still was a while to go down. But now understanding that my right kidney is genetically weaker than my left, and that I've generally always had issues on my right side more than my left, it makes perfect sense. And I think explaining to someone, if you've done their iris reading, if you've done the health form, and they're going through something like this, and you can explain to them, well, this area, look, it is, and this is something so beautiful too. I've done iris readings for people without knowing anything about them, and you pretty much hit the nail on the head. There's a few things you can't know because you can't know like what the damage was from. But if you have their story, then you know what that is. But you see that nothing is just random. Maybe you missed something one time, okay, fair enough. But nothing is. There's no guessing. There's no just like, oh well, that's this area this time, that's that area that time. It all makes perfect sense, and I think that's really reassuring to someone on a detox journey, because they can be going through a really hard time, and you can remind them of why this is happening. And then when they feel those spurts of energy that you talked about, where there will come a moment where this low point will no longer be happening for you. There'll be a moment of clarity and energy that'll become more of the standard, more the norm. And I think it's really, from what I've seen, I think this is probably the largest thing in what we do that will take a while for it to be normalized in people, because it is, I think, the scariest aspect. Whereas everything else generally in our world is suppress a symptom and feel better in about 48 hours or so. You've sort of got this sort of world of, well, I'm used to going somewhere. Mm.
Yeah, it's a shame that people don't realize that it's going to take hard work to get get rid of all your disease, but it's so worth it. Like, is your misery, is your pain, is your suffering, even emotionally, and feeling like unworthy and, oh, I could never be like that. Like, is it worth it just taking 3 to 6 months? We don't know how long it really takes a detox, but getting that foundation started
Yeah.
becomes easy. Just having a time frame in your mind and just sticking to it versus a whole lifetime of suffering and getting worse and worse. It's like, it's not worth it when you think about it. Everything is, yes, so temporary and so instant gratification, and people are not willing to feel the pain and feel their feelings. And that's
Yeah.
really a big part of detox, is sitting with your feelings, especially in the beginning when you feel like you're starving and your stomach is ripping apart. It's like, wait, what if I just sit here and observe what I'm going through? Am I really
Mm.
starving? Hasn't been
Mm.
40 days. Like, what's
Yeah.
going on inside of me? So I think that's really interesting, to take yourself out of your body, this avatar, and really just
Mm.
be more connected spiritually, and treat it like a vessel, and just look at yourself, from the outside, and observe what's
Mm.
going on. I think that's the funnest part to me about detox, is
Yeah.
making a separation, and treating it like a container, for it's a house for the spiritual us. And
Mm.
seeing what comes up is exciting, because you can
Mm.
figure out where you are weak and where you need more work.
Mm.
Emotionally too, things come up.
Yeah.
But
That is so true. And it's an aspect that, whether you like it or not, you'll be facing the emotional, the spiritual side. Whether you call it that is neither here nor there, but it's like you will be, especially I've seen male clients who go, oh no, this sounds great, sounds easy, yeah, I can do that, yeah, love fruit, no problem. And then a few weeks later, they they're like look like they want to cry, and he's like, maybe it's best to do that, because they're not expecting it. And it's something that they thought only applied to female yoga girls, or like the Pilates group or something, these sort of things that they've got in their head as being not applicable to them because of the way they have perceived themselves in their life, which is a very humbling thing. And that was me too. I grew up with a single mom, but I actually realized by not having a dad around that I didn't know, like, there were aspects of me moving through my emotions, which now in my relationship with my partner, she I've noticed that difference with us where there's still an aspect somewhere, even if it's minuscule, of, oh, stay strong, don't show emotion, whatever. Like emotion, showing like crying is not weakness. And I think that's something that people may think as well, that if you release something emotionally, that's like showing weakness or cowardice or something. And no, that's a natural, it's like this, it's like the way we have when we eat food and drink, we need to urinate and we need to go to the toilet and pass stool. The same way, if something happens, you got that emotion is going to come in and it has to come out, and it'll come out however it happens. If it's a bit of anger that rises through and releases, if it's a bit of sadness, grief, it's the non-physical aspect of the physical, of what you physically do. And I wanted to actually just end on that little part here about something really, I think one of the most beautiful things, and I actually have the book here, it's coincidentally, but this book sort of touches on it. That you probably heard of it, the Essene Gospel of Peace.
I love that. Was one of the, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm making a series actually on my channel because I've noticed a lot of people have been searching Jesus in the Essenes recently, like big YouTube channels, and a lot of people are misrepresenting the Essene Gospel of Peace. I think ignorantly, they're being subconscious about it, but it's a very straightforward book. Book 1 specifically, there's not really any ambiguity in there. But the point is, and I think you touched on it, and it's outlined there very, very beautifully, is you don't have to see this as something that you do forever, that you can get a foundation of 3 to 6 months, even if you just get 100% 3 months for that window. And it's something Ben, who I just interviewed on my last, one of my last videos, he's the guy that owns Invictus in Australia here, that distributes all of Dr. Morse's herbs.
Yeah.
And he was a big bodybuilder guy, and he did it like perfectly for 3 months. And that was enough for him. He got what he wanted. He got his blood pressure from a critical state down to perfect. And he was happy with that. And he moved on, and he just eats fruits and vegetables and some grains, but his bulk is like raw fruits and vegetables. And he's also, he's really strong. And he's like, the fact that you can take your body from a lifetime of abuse to getting it to a point that it was healthier than it was probably when you were born in like less than a year is incredible. And that's, to me, and I think you agree, is exciting. And when I've explained that to clients in that way, you sort of see a little light bulb. So some of them go, oh, well, I don't want to do 3 months or 6 months. You get that kind of person. But then you generally get people that go, oh yeah, well, if you put it in that perspective, that it's not something I always have to do forever. And it's like, yeah, but probably by that point, you probably want to live more that way anyway, because you feel better.
Exactly. That's the whole thing, is you're playing on their emotions. Like, it's only 3 months, it's only 6 months, and you're going to feel so much better. And you're probably going to correct a lot of the problems that you're going through. Most people will be like, all right, I can take the challenge. But then you're hoping, and you know that 3 months, first of all, that's going to be a routine that you're used to doing already.
Yeah.
And it's like, why am I going to go back to drinking milk and eating animals? Like, that's not going to, for most people, I don't think it's going to sit well with them, and they're going to feel it too. And that's the biggest part. But I don't know. My hope is that, the clients will do the 3 or 6 months and just feel so amazing that they're not going to want to go back to.
Yeah.
And it's an energetic thing. Like, forget the health and diet. That's a huge part of our life, but it's the whole transfer of consciousness. Like, when you're eating just fruits and living foods, your experience is so much more, it's so different. It's like such a novel way to live, where you walk outside and you get like downloads from being in the sun. And I know that sounds like really different and crazy, but it's just because you're on a different level, and it makes it fun. So I try to tell people who are more open to that stuff, that part of it, like, when you sit in meditation, you're able to just connect to everything that is in the ether, because there's no empty space.
No.
So that's really what makes it fun for me.
Well, yeah, and something you said that I think is really, really vital there is, and I like saying this to people, and I try to go out of my way to speak to people that look like I've had conversations. It's weird. I've had people come up to me in like a shopping mall and just ask me something kind of related to health out of nowhere. They're complete random, and you get these weird sort of these weird encounters. And I think it's because it's like a child or an animal. Like if you're a kind, loving person, you'll get children, babies will stare at you, animals will come to you. You know, there's that famous thing of like, you know, dogs or cats sense evil. Like we had a cat who, when there was someone that was had a lot of, you know, thoughts of like abuse towards animals, the cat would just hiss or run away from that person. And I remember that as a kid. And you see that like energy attracts like energy. So it's just energy dynamics essentially. And so what I've noticed is when you show someone that to experience health, true health on more levels than one is not an elite or like a special, you know, you need some special sort of requirement, or you need to do, you know, a lifetime of meditation or whatever. It's like you can start getting this now. It's not like a special thing that like anyone can get it. And this is why whenever I have a conversation with someone that is very you know, totally just you see in a different field, a different game essentially, like they're in a different book, they got you almost like speaking a different language to them. What I try to do is I'll say to them, do you feel like there's something wrong, and that you think that there's some in your body, and do you feel that because you haven't been given the answers that doesn't feel right, that there's nothing around you that is saying that you can change your situation? And the few people I've said this to, random people, some of which have said, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why is it that I would have this problem, but why is it that other animals in nature wouldn't? And I'm like, exactly. So you sort of use this Socratic method, this questioning of, is there an ounce, like a little, and I think that's what it is when these people like gravitate to you, or you find yourself doing a talk or something, and there's someone there that might be skeptical, but there's that little part of them that goes, there's something to this person that's speaking towards a part of me that is very dormant, or like just a little voice saying, yes, listen to that. And I think that's a really important thing. And that's a way to get to people that, because I try to get to as many people as I can, even if I just talk to them and have a conversation with the neighbor or something where they're living a completely different life. The next thing you see, they've like now gone to the farmer's market and bought fresh fruit. And you go, oh, cool. You know, and I think it's appealing to a level of humanity that is still there, but because of the way we live is being suppressed, and, you know, because of the powers that be don't really like this. And I think it's an interesting observation that fruit generally is the last thing recommended. It's always like the last thing on the pyramid. It's everything's like this 180 flip on its head. And there was this guy that I used to watch on YouTube, and he got removed. He was saying way too much truth, I think. And one of the things he said, if you want to find truth, just do a 180 of what's been taught to you.
I mean, it's so true.
I thought it was a pretty good rule of thumb to use in a lot of cases.
Very true. And everything is energy. And so what you said about like attracts like, if you are connected to yourself and you're eating, you know, mostly foods that are vibrating love, when you're out and about, you're going to carry this energy about you. They say our heart radiates an aura around us, like 6 feet in diameter. So anyone who is within the aura will just feel different around you, feel more comfortable, feel more like at ease. And that will make them curious to ask questions about your life or just start talking with you. So what's funny that you say that is I see so many people, just probably like you do too, that are in bad, like obese, or like just, you know, in wheelchairs, or kids with ADD, or what is it? Not ADD, autism.
Yeah.
All these problems that are so rampant nowadays, you see them when you go out. And it's just been so pressing on me that I remember hearing, I don't know what I was listening to, but someone was like, I think it might have been Dr. Christopher, but they mentioned that someone had said to them, some doctor in Pennsylvania, like, you're fat. Do you want to keep living being fat? And the person was like, oh, it was the trucker guy that Dan McDonald helped, some obese trucker guy. And he said, if that guy didn't come to me and just be so straight up and say that, he was like, I wouldn't have changed my life. But the way he approached me and said, I have a solution for you, he's like, I believed him. So I'm not going to be that direct with people, but I see people, and it's like they don't have to be suffering or injecting themselves with insulin. And it just hurts your heart to see so much pain, especially with children for me, like I have a soft spot for kids.
Yeah, same.
I've been thinking like I just am going to figure out a way to approach people in a kind way. Just tell them like I see you're struggling here and I have a solution. But we're not all, you're in Australia, I'm here in Florida. There's not very many people where I am. There's probably not very many people where you are who do that, who live this way. I feel like
No.
we're scattered about
Yeah.
because we need to, if we were all congregated, because we all love
Yeah.
to eat the same stuff and we want to make our own community. It's not selfish in a way, because I mean that would be awesome, but we are meant to be spread out to help others. It's like we're not just
Yeah.
given this knowledge just because, just because knowledge is
Mm.
to be shared and to help others. So there's
Mm.
got to be ways that we reach people, but I just liked hearing that because I was like, wow, to be so direct like that is awesome, and it's true too. Like people know
Mm.
they're overweight. People know they shouldn't be eating the way they're eating.
Mm.
They know deep down that it's something they're doing. Like I did when I was, obese and in so much pain. I knew, like I was drinking beer every night. I was smoking weed and I was watching TV. I wasn't doing anything helpful for myself. It's like, why am I going to cry and play victim if I'm not doing anything to help myself? So that's
Mm.
why I was like, you know what? I'm going to do the yoga for 7 days. I'm going to do this and just see what happens. And my whole life
Mm.
changed. So
Yeah.
I just wish more people stop being comfortable. Like, forget comfort. Life is about challenges. Your brain
Mm.
grows, you expand when you challenge yourself. So,
And you know, I've noticed recently that's because I'm someone that's come from seeing my mum pretty much have an organic apple in one hand and a bag of potato chips in the other. She's always been like two extremes. She's either like just only buying biodynamic organic food or eating junk food. And this
yeah.
is why she's got serious problems. And I grew up watching her binging on stuff. So my sort of emotional eating is being so advanced at levels that were, where a few years ago, like 4 years ago, would have been just to get through the day, I would need to consume a certain amount of vegan junk food. Like it was all vegan. And I was like, yeah, well, it's vegan. And then you have this sort of excuse. But what's interesting is when you change your perspective and look out, like as Dr. Moore says, like get away from the mind, like what's actually going on, is when you actually start to experience feeling good, that you want to continue to do that. But then what can happen is if you identify with your problem, you will find yourself, you may self sabotage to subconsciously put yourself back into a point of suffering so that you're continually healing. And I think Ben told me that line from Invictus, who I did the video with. He said, a lot of people stay sick so they're always healing. The quote is something like, stay sick to always heal. So you identify with this problem, and that's why you got to be like, what's beyond your problem? Who are you? Because you are not your problem. So when you ask someone, like to a
Yeah.
client, like, and I had to ask myself this, and that was a game changer for me because in my head, I've always had, well, I'm someone that has teeth problems. I'm someone that has skin problems. I'm someone that has hair problems. And then it's just like, well, I know it doesn't have to be that way. And that's actually not my experience. Even though I'm living mostly fruit and raw foods, it's those little times when I'm just still telling myself subconsciously in my mind, the part we talked about, how it's not really the diet related part. This is to do with your psyche that's saying that you are that. And it's like, well, I'm not that. And then, so like, what's beyond my suffering? What's beyond this problem? What? And then a lot of people don't know. A lot of people, they're like, well, crap, I haven't thought of that. Like, what could you do? Oh, I could live my best life. What does my best life look like? I have no idea. Write down your ideas. Like, it's exciting. As you said, like, this is an exciting path. And there's something I wanted to end there, which I think is really motivated me when I went from trying to get from a point of, I put so much energy into helping other people that I often just didn't fully help myself in the same respect. It may have been like 80% or 90% or 70% sometimes, but I was like, I could be doing better for myself. I know I could, but I'm not doing it. And I'm sort of using the fact that I'm helping other people through being a practitioner, that, that's sort of I sort of use that as a blocker. And I knew that was an emotional thing. And what it was that got me to fully change and fully just 100% just embrace it was the fact that it's like the reason why I'm saying this is it reminded me of what you said when you were obese, smoking weed, watching TV, is when the actions that you take that and not helping yourself improve, you're going to feel worse because you know that that action is leading you nowhere. You know that that action is just leading you to more suffering and pain. So that when you know that the action that you're about to take can be an action that's going to make you feel far worse or is going to make you feel better, and you can just distinguish the two easily, then it's like, do I want to suffer or do I want to actually get better? Like the way that Dan asked that here said to that man, do you want to be fat the rest of your life? Some people might see that as like brutal, but it's like, that is a straight up honest question. And it's like, you can ask that in a more soft way, sure. Or you can, some people, you may need that direct sort of emotional punch because they need to be hit with that and go, actually, no, I don't. Or like, do you want to see your kids, you know, in the next 5 years? And I think having that distinguished, like anyone listening that may be struggling, you know, if you know something's going to make you feel worse, just based on 8 years of suffering, I'm telling you right now, when you do something that makes you feel worse, you know you're going to feel way worse after you've done that. Even with the temporary lift from it, whether it's weed, a junk food thing, you might get a temporary lift. You're going to feel worse after than you were before when you thought that that point of that suffering needed that stimulant or that drug or that junk food. And that you're guaranteed, you're literally 100% guaranteed to feel worse than you were in that low point. And I think that's a really motivating way to get out of that.
It's interesting that you put it like that, because the friend who is my now client, she was an ex-addict, and she would tell me about like her addictions, and she was like, you meth, for instance, she was like, you never, it feels so good, you never want it to end. So when it's ending, you need to go get it. You know, just like any crack or whatever drug. And that's what food is. So it's like, you know, it's such an emotional thing, and people just will binge eat, or they'll look forward to we're always thinking about food. So it's, when you see it as a drug, it's like how you really should have more control and regulation with it. And there's so little that we really need to nourish ourselves, really. When you clean up, because people are always like, oh, aren't you hungry all the time? It's like, no, actually, this juice, a 32-ounce juice, once you drink that, it has so many minerals and vitamins that you're surprised that, wow, I'm not really that hungry. Like I could probably eat a salad or a piece of fruit and I'm good. Because people are always like, oh, what do you do for cravings? I'm like, I go and I run and I get a juice. Honestly, like it might not be what I really want to eat, but I trained myself to learn that when I drink that, there's so much in it that you still feel light in your stomach, but it satiates you so much that you're like, all right, I can go for a smoothie and that will be fine. Like I'm not looking for the chips and the bread and a parasite food. But yeah, food is a drug, and I haven't been perfect on my journey. That first 3 years was incredible. I was in and out of my body so much. Definitely trying to get back there, but had a relationship that kind of threw me off. Don't have that anymore. So I'm really now I'm just refining everything so much, and I've learned a lot about the spiritual part of it and the emotional part of it. And I had a lot of emotional trauma growing up, and I'm learning to address that with Reiki and other, energy manipulation stuff. And it's been really helpful. And I'm learning that, like, just like you, I've been trying to put so much into my kids and my clients that I'm like, oh, there's no time to really focus on Adrienne. But no, first we have to fill our cups first. And so I am hardcore 100% raw again, and it feels great. And my kids, I gave them, because they're kids, and like I don't want to make that an excuse, because they're still people and they're going to grow up and have all this accumulation going on. But I told them 5 days raw, 2 days cooked food. You can eat it with your dad. I'll get you guys cooked food once a week. But I came back from a trip last week, and I was just thinking, like, why would I do that for them? Like, no, we need to kill the parasites, because those 2 days of cooked food, they're looking for, vegan pizza and breads, and it's like, that's just keeping those parasites and molds in you. So it's been hard. I'm trying to get them to realize that, but my daughter is 15 and she'll be 18. She thinks 18 is a magic number where she's just going to move out and she's going to eat however she wants. She wants to be vegetarian. And it kind of breaks my heart, but I'm like, you know what? You're going to know how different that is. When you start eating vegetarian, you're going to feel how different it is. But
Yeah.
it just makes me more, what's the word? Dedicated to cleaning out their parasites and all that stuff. And I'm included. So I don't know where I went off on that tangent, but yeah, staying raw is a challenge, you know, and you're going to go through ups and downs. There's always a learning process, but definitely it feels good to, when you have those little cheat days or whatever, it sets you off on wanting more and more and more, because it just feeds
Yeah.
the salts and the sugars. So it's been a huge lesson. I can't even, and like, I've had an addictive personality in the past, and for me, I have to realize that I can't even allow that stuff. Like, I'll just do the gourmet raw
Yeah.
because it throws me off and I don't feel good, and I get right back in that hole of,
Yeah.
you know, feeling unworthy and all that stuff. So
It's so
yeah.
true, because I'm the same. I've, learning that addictive personality from my mum's actions, which again, like, I just wanted to say for the record, for everyone, these places that we find ourselves in, they're not our fault. Like, these aren't, people often think this is me, 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 me. No, 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 this isn't you. This is an environment, a Western world mostly, that is not conducive of living well, and that knowing that whenever you come up against a challenge, this isn't something that you just knowingly and willingly chose to bring into your life. But these are generally actions of ignorance. And when you take actions from ignorance, you're completely unaware. So you just do things and you don't realize the consequence of it. But once you begin to learn to undo that, then you now come from a place of knowing. And making a choice, a negative choice from a place of knowing, is not a fun experience comparative to making a choice from ignorance. Because when you choose something that's is going to be a negative choice for you, in terms of food, for example, and it's going to make you feel a certain way emotionally and physically as well, and better, that's not a fun feeling. And as you said, these things, the difference between like doing raw gourmet and cooked, I'm at that point now where I used to recommend more so for my clients. It's a bit different, but I used to recommend to people and to my clients a lot of the time is like, I'd rather you see have a little more complicated raw meal than just simple cooked food. Because I did hear something, it may have been from Professor Arnold Ehret. I think it was Arnold Ehret that said this, but don't quote me. Something along the lines of the body doesn't see cooked food, no matter really what it is, even if it's mucusless, doesn't really see it as food because it's got no life left in it. So it almost sees it as a foreign invader in a way. And it may have not been Professor Ehret, but through Professor Spira doing the revised work of Arnold Ehret's work. But I'm at that point now where I'll even notice just a simple cooked food, I can feel something happening passively somewhere that's like building something negative that I know is something that I don't want to have part of me anymore. And I think a really cool thing that I know Dr. Morse touched on is, he said this, I think at his school and in some of his videos too, that most people experience life from a point of suffering. Very few people experience life from a point of actual enjoyment and true health. And that is a sad reality. And when he said that, I'm like, yeah, that actually is, yeah, as a kid, really angry, a lot of health problems, should have died like 2 or 3 times. Yeah, well, yeah, that's a lot of suffering. It's like, well, yeah, of course. And then you see other people like obesity, depression, all these sort of conditions, and then you look at that's normal. So it's normal to feel crap in one way or another. And what's really sad is I think people cling to that because they think that that's just the way things are. It's the way the cookie crumbles. It's the cards I've been dealt. I can't do anything about it. I drink alcohol now because it's to feel a bit better. Whatever it may be is what the person may say. But
Yeah.
what is really a beautiful thing is when you can show someone that isn't actually their reality, that you can change that, and that suffering doesn't have to be. And I think a big reason why people struggle, and I've seen this with clients, is I use this analogy of a coin. Imagine one side of the coin is making choices, that are for the better of your emotional state and your physical body, and the other side is the exact opposite. So it's something that's negative. And I've said, and suffering. And I'm like, for me at least, and I think for a lot of people, we tend to have spent most of our time on the negative side of life, on the negative side of the coin. So as you start making more positive actions, that coin starts flipping and you start to experience the other side. But this other side is very foreign. You're not really familiar with it. So you flip it back to the other side again because you're used to it. You know everything about it. You know the picture on that side of the coin. So then you defaultly live more negatively. But what's really beautiful is you said that at the beginning about takes 21 days to establish a habit, which I think is a really cool thing. Because when you say to someone, look, if you can just do 3 months and you can dedicate yourself, and knowing that first 21 days is probably going to be the hardest period, and I've actually experienced that with things as well, so it makes a lot of sense, is that coin is going to start flipping onto the positive side, and next thing you know, you spend most of your time on that what used to be the foreign side of the coin, which is the part that we should be defaultly living on. And in a way, you could say that everything around us wants us to live on the other side of the coin, which is like quick gratification, quick pleasure, a lot of suffering, a lot of consequences, a heavy weight, a heavy burden. Whereas the other side is virtually no burden, be free from these sufferings. And from my experience with myself and other people and clients, is I've had someone say, actually, I enjoy suffering. And I've gone, okay, I can't do anything about that. And it's like, if you choose suffering, like that is your choice, but you know where that's going to take you. And, but generally people don't want to suffer. Yeah.
Well, we live in such a great time where there's so much knowledge out there at our fingertips, and we can choose to look into it or not. But realizing what you're mentioning about negative or positive, rewriting our own subconscious programming is a huge part that anyone can do. It just takes some training and repetition. But
Yeah.
that is a good place to start too, knowing that you're worthy, and affirmations.
Yeah.
That stuff is all true, and yeah, to be able to enjoy your life how you're meant to, so much power and love. It's our right to be here, to
Mm.
enjoy creation. But,
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think maybe we'll wrap it up there, but I just wanted to sort of, like say that I hope that people have gotten a new perspective on how to maintain, getting well and learning from, those of us that have made a lot of mistakes. It's like, let that be the paved path, essentially. You look at people like Eric and Dr. Morse that have done certain things, Professor Arnold Ehret did certain things that we don't need to redo ourselves. Like, we don't need to be in a place of immense suffering and loss to turn our life around. This is why, I think you said you have an affinity for children, and so do I, because if you can get the kids healthy earlier on, they're not going to even have the problems that the adults have. But unfortunately, we see with iridology what the genetic past looks like when you see the genetic weakness. And that's where I see the biggest problems is in children's eyes. You look at them and you just go, oh my God, my grandma doesn't even have this.
yeah.
And it's a real worry. And any parents listening, please reach out to Adrienne and myself, because we're just an extension of Dr. Morse. I call myself Mini Morse. Like, to some people, it's just like, we're just two people that have been gravitated towards Dr. Morse's wonderful teachings, which comes from a background of really what's traditional naturopathy, which is what it used to be. And yeah, Adrienne, any last words, anything you want to say? I'll put all of Adrienne's contacts in the bottom to reach out to her, to work with her, have a chat with her, whatever. All of Adrienne's details we put in there. And just thanks so much for being on today's episode. It was a really, really awesome chat. So any last words or any other things you want to add before we wrap up?
Just to encourage everybody, because we all have something going on with us. Just give yourself that time frame. If you can just stick it out for 3 months, why not do something different and just change your life? But I just encourage everyone to try do something different in your life and see how much you turn it around.
No,
Yeah.
it's so beautiful. And I think that is one of the best things I've seen for myself too. Is I remember telling myself, Jake, you're like doing all these protocols for clients, and you do coaching for like 3 months with people, and I think, well, how come I haven't really just fully dived in and done that? And it's like, I'm like, 3 months, I'm like, that's easy. I can do that, no problem. And it's funny because all the energy is going elsewhere. But then when you really do think of it, it's not a long period of time, like 90 days, more or less. It's there's longer challenges.
We're
Yeah.
already in mid 2024, so it's like, shoot.
And
Yeah.
things go fast. This is the thing, and I said this to someone recently, someone that was, I don't know if he will still work with me, but he's a very large human. I think he's like 430 pounds or something, at 450 or so, I think, like that. And he, we've had the conversations about like not wanting to suffer, not wanting to be on this negative spiral continuously. And I asked him, like, do you want to suffer more? Like, is this how you want to continue? And he's like, no, definitely not. But then it's always like, I can't do it. And there was something I said to him. It was like a proverb. It was similar to the thing with what Dan said. I don't remember what it was. I had it on the tip of my tongue just before, but it was something that was very hard hitting. But it's knowing when, whether it's with friends or family, when there's the time to say an element of truth in a very direct manner that could be the piercing arrow that gets them to like snap out of this self-sabotaging loop, because that's what I've seen that required for myself. I've seen that. Otherwise, you're going to get a rude awakening at some point. Something's going to happen to you where you're really going to be up against the wall of, is it imminent death, or is it the alternative? And generally, you don't want to be in that situation. So, as you said, if you can make a commitment and give yourself the honesty to do this, even if you just give yourself 1 month, and then after a month, I'm just going to do it for a month, and then you do another month. It's, when you tell yourself it's only for this period of time, it's more obtainable than if you go, I've got a year. Then it's scary. Then it's, oh, well, I couldn't do that. And I think that's a huge helper in the scheme of things. So yeah, Adrienne, thank you so much for being on here. This has been an awesome
Thank
chat.
you. I
Yeah,
appreciate
no,
it.
awesome. Yeah, cool. And yeah, as I said, I'll put all of your details in the description. This will be, if you guys are watching on YouTube, you can find that in the link here in the bio, and then on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, it'll be in the description there as well for you guys. And yeah, thank you so much. And maybe we'll do another one in the near future discussing more client stuff and anything else. It'll be awesome.
Yes, definitely.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Adrienne. Bye.
Bye.